Kia ora koutou. We will start the Community Committee meeting, and I will start with the opening karakia. Tū taua mai runga, tū taua mai raro, tū taua mai roto, tū taua mai waho. Ke taua te Māori tū, te Māori ora, ki te katoa, homie huie taukie. Come forth from above, below, within, and from the environment. Vitality and well-being for all are strengthened in unity. So welcome all, haere mai, to the Community Committee meeting. And we will start with the health and safety, I believe. Yeah. Okay, so the meeting is being recorded and will be live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. Health and safety is on the screen, so if there's a fire or emergency, please leave by the nearest fire exit and evacuate to the clock tower in Te Maraeohine. Smoking is prohibited with any council public entrance building or site. If needed, there's a defibrillator outside the entrance to customer services on the ground floor. And if there are any near-miss or incidents, please report to the committee administrator, Nico, or to Sarah. If you're presenting, please state your name before speaking and use the microphone. Push the right-hand button. Red light means the mic is on. I don't think we're expecting any councillors online at the moment. But if you are online, please give your name first. Thank you. Okay, so we will move on to apologies. We have apologies from the Mayor on council business and from Councillor Wood for early departure. Are there any other apologies? Councillor Meehan.
Possible early departure.
Thank you. Okay, well, I will move that we receive the apologies, seconded by Councillor Hancock, and we'll vote on that, please. And that is carried, 11 votes for and none against. There are no additional items that have been notified. Does anyone else have any? No? Okay. Are there any declarations of interest? No. I haven't been notified of any public comment. Is there any public comment? No. Okay, well that takes us on to item 6, which is the confirmation of minutes of the meeting of the 19th of March. And Department Public, and I'd like to move that they be confirmed as a true and correct record. Seconded Councillor Hancock. Are there any corrections? No, then we'll take a vote to confirm the minutes, please. And that is passed, 10 votes for and 1 abstention. So our first report is item 7 on page 11, and that is recommendation to engage sector lead organisations. And so I'd like to invite Ahmed Obeid and Stephanie Velvin, Community Development Advisor and Manager Community Development, to the table. Kia ora kōrua.
Morena koutou, ko Stephanie Falvin, tōku ingoa, Manager Community Development. This report recommends the engagement of 2 organisations in sector lead partnership agreements. Expressions of interest were called following the recent conclusion of the SPG assessments, and Nuvaka Trust and Mash Trust both provided robust evidence that they meet all of the criteria as set out in the support and funding policy. Happy to take questions.
Thanks very much, Steph. I'll open up for questions. First up, we have Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Stephanie. How many sector leads are enough?
There's no limit in the policy.
Great, thank you. Just interested around the 3 that didn't meet the criteria in 2.2, and just any general observations around kind of which criteria were the most challenging for them to meet?
It varied across the assessments. Sorry, I've got the criteria there. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so it was generally it was around the first 2 criteria. So yeah, where there wasn't a strong case made around an acknowledged strategic leadership role, i.e. their peers in the sector hadn't been strongly demonstrated that that was an acknowledged strategic leadership role. And then also there wasn't strong evidence for some of those applications around their role as a capacity building organisation. So we see that as a really key, as it's in the criteria, a really key feature of being a sector lead, that they're there supporting other organisations to grow.
Great, thank you. And was feedback provided to those groups?
Yes.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We just had a problem with the microphone there. I think Councillor Zabellum was next in the queue, so I'll see if I can pop her through.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. I had a couple of questions. One was, what is the sector that MASH would be the lead for? It was not quite clear to me from the report what the particular sector, because they do such a wide variety of work, what is the sector that is being represented?
So as set out in the policy, we're referring to the for-purpose sector, so the social service sector.
Okay, great. Thank you. And have we done any engagement or socialising these appointments?
So through the process, the organisations were required to provide evidence that they meet the criteria. And so the 2 successful organisations provided multiple letters of support, and some of those we followed up and checked and did some verification.
Letters of support from different agencies within the sector?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And has there been any kind of wider community input for the Pacifica sector?
No, so that's not a feature of the process as set out in the policy, but also they're not being appointed as a Pacifica sector lead. They're not there to represent the Pacifica community. They're there because they meet the criteria as set out in the policy as a leader of the sector, social service sector.
So a social service sector lead that delivers like for Pacifica specifically?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, thank you. So our policy and process doesn't allow for wider engagement outside of organisational structures?
If we thought that there was a need to verify some of the information to be satisfied that they met the criteria, then we wouldn't feel like we couldn't do that, but it's not something that we're required to do through the process.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just following on from Councillor Zabellan's line of questioning, so I've had some communication from members of the Pacifica Reference Group who said they were informed last night that this was coming. If we were going to inform the Pacifica Reference Group, why would we only do it the night before the recommendation comes to Council or to committee?
Yeah, so as I said previously, it's not a feature of the process that we would seek input or engagement. So the organisations are required to demonstrate that they meet the criteria as set out in the policy. Both of these organisations provided very robust evidence that they met the criteria through that process.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions myself, Steph. So how would an organisation be aware that they could apply to be a sector lead?
So all strategic priority grants recipients received a letter inviting them to apply.
Okay. And that letter contained the criteria for what was involved
Correct.
to be selected? Okay. And then in terms of, I guess, the process, you have followed the process presumably in the community and community funding and support policy.
Sorry, could you say that again?
What is the process that you followed for assigning the sector leads and the whole process? Is that as laid out in the community and funding support policy?
Correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. When is that policy next up for review?
This year? Next year? Year 2. This year.
Okay, this
Calendar year. This calendar year? Sorry. Year 2 of the LTP.
Year 2 of the LTP. Okay, thank you. And do you know how that review will be conducted? Will we be seeking community views, elected member views, that sort of thing?
Yes.
Would it be okay if we invited Julie to speak to her area of expertise?
Kia ora koutou, Julie McDonald, Manager Strategy and Policy. Yes, so we've been talking quite a lot about when it's appropriate to review this policy, because obviously there's councils always adopting a funding envelope and then we're setting rules about how that funding is distributed, so it's almost like there's never a good time to review it. We've incorporated the changes from the LTP into sort of a technical update, which is going to be published shortly, and pulled out the sector lead guidance that council directed through that last discussion, the decisions that have been made since the policy was adopted into a new section, so that will be published soon. But the review, to answer your question, the review will obviously be a proper policy review, which would, include community engagement, engagement with all the SPG recipients and the wider community-led sector. Yeah.
And what would be the elected member input?
Oh, the usual. So I imagine we would probably start with a workshop if we could get one.
Okay. Thank you for that. And as regards, I think this is to you again, sorry, Steph. As regards the Pacifica Reference Group, would normally, if a paper was coming to council that had a reference to Pacifica in it, would that normally be socialised with the Pacifica Reference Group ahead of time? Or what's the normal process?
Yes, typically we would socialise it. I would say this paper we did try and push through to get to this committee so that we could have the decision in time for 1 July. So probably if we'd had a little bit more time to reflect in between writing and presenting, we would have noted that opportunity to present it more formally and discuss it more formally. But the opportunity would have still been last night to discuss that with them because of the frequency of their meetings.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm aware the paper came a bit late in the piece, so thank you for that. Are there any further questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for your report. So look, I'm happy to move that the council engage the following organisations through sector-led partnership for the period 1 July 2025 to 30 June 2028. A, MASH Trust, and B, Nuvaka Trust. I'll look for a seconder, Councillor Hancock. I'll just make a few opening remarks and then I'll open it up for comments. I think I've heard, I suppose, through elected members that there are some things that we feel that the policy isn't quite achieving, that it's not quite doing what we would have hoped it might do, or perhaps it's not working in ways that we would have anticipated. But nevertheless, staff are following the policy in the way that they're engaging with organisations and commissioning, well, accepting, I suppose, sector lead partnership agreements. So at this stage, I think if elected members are feeling that there's things about the policy that they want to change, then make a note of them, and those we'll be able to engage with when we go through the policy review later this year. Other than that, I mean, I feel that staff have gone through a robust process and that these organisations have come out the other side as accredited sector lead organisations, the sector being the not-for-profit or the for-purpose sector. So I hope that you'll support this. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your questions around the policy settings that we're in at the moment. That certainly sets my mind at ease. No question that these organisations are valued and trusted partner organisations in our sector. My only concerns with the report were around, are we getting the outcomes that we thought we'd be getting? You're bearing in mind, this is still quite a new way of working for us as an organisation in establishing sector leads, and it's appropriate, I think, to reflect on how that's going. So I'm encouraged by the comments from officers about the policy review process, that elected member input will be sought into that so that we can have that check-in. I think for me, my level of maybe discomfort is about the organic nature of the process that we've talked about before, that there seems to be a lack of not staff's lack, a lack of elected member input or direction into how we establish sectors, how many sector lead organisations any one sector might have, and what the benefits are, we think, of reducing or increasing those numbers. So that's the kind of direction I'll be looking for through that policy review, but happy to support the recommendations for these specific organisations today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Zabellin.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yes, I think this has spoken to an interesting gap in our process, and the lack of engagement with the Pacifica community about an appointment which would set an organisation to represent and work with in a capacity building way the whole of the Pacifica community without any heads up or input sought, I think is something that is a flaw in our process. This we've been building a relationship, particularly through the Pacifica Reference Group. The purpose of that group is to act as a conduit between council and the community, and we receive lots of presentations of all sorts of topics of council business, from climate change to medium density housing, and it does seem like a pretty significant gap in our process if we are neglecting to mention this or to seek feedback on this item, which does directly impact their communities and their responsibility, if you like, to communicate this information back to their community. I want to say this is no reflection whatsoever on any of the organisations in the slightest. They do just fantastic work and have seen great growth in a sustained way, or to the staff who are doing this work as the process sets out. It's more a reflection of our style of engagement or the process that we've set up, if we can unilaterally make new appointments without recourse to the community that they will be serving. I think what's different here is we often are making appointments that relate to aligned interest sectors, such as the environment or arts, for example. But this is a specific cultural community, and to make an appointment without widely circulating that this appointment might be coming up, I think feels not very respectful. So I would like to see the policy reflect more of that respectful relationship in the future. Thank you.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I agree with everything Councillor Zabellin's just said. I'm a little bit fresh on this. So at about 8:30 this morning, I had a text forwarded me from Councillor Harper, who's not able to be here. She's not a member of this community, from one of our Pacifica Reference Group co-chairs. So I think for the value of us all operating on the same information, I thought I'd just share with you what was sent to me, which was, we acknowledge the decision is likely to proceed regarding the Nuvaka Trust being appointed as a reference group. While we wish it wouldn't and be held off until more engagement with our community occurs, we also agree that having a sector lead is a step forward, but not like this. We believe this was a missed opportunity to honour the process in a way that reflects the relational nature of our Pacifica cultures. And so that's what puts me in a bit of an awkward position this morning, is I haven't had a chance to go out and engage with other people from the Pacifica community or with our Pacifica reference group. And so I sit here today kind of torn as to whether I can support B as it is. I appreciate what the chair is suggesting, that we review the process, and I think that's a very good idea, so I am supportive of that. But I wonder, given, as Councillor Zabellin outlined, that this is a cultural sector lead rather than opposed to a more broad sector like we've done traditionally, whether it is appropriate today to go, well, that's the process, let's just get on with it, or whether it's better to say, let's approve the MASH Trust and hold off on the Nuvaka Trust. No disrespect to Nuvaka Trust, everything I've seen from them has been remarkably impressive, particularly given they're a reasonably new organisation. But given that, I don't feel in good faith I can vote in favour of B, so I'd ask that that be separated. And then once that's separated, I'd like to move a procedural motion 2.14.1 E, that the item of business being discussed be left to lie on the table until further consultation is done, and I'd ask that that would go straight to a vote, if I have a seconder. Councillor Micklard. Just B.
So since a procedural motion has been called, what that means is that the debate on the item ceases and we immediately take the procedural motion without any further speakers. So the procedural motion, as I understand it, is just for 1B, is that
Just for
correct,
1B.
Councillor Wood? So that the decision around sector lead partnership agreement for Nuvaka Trust be laid on the table. Did you have a date or a condition to put with that?
The condition until further consultation with the Pacifica community has been done.
Until further consultation with the Pacifica community has been done. Okay, if you can just give us a minute for
Thank you.
governance staff to get that up, and then we will just go straight to a vote on that aspect only.
Just, that was a text forwarded, so it's from Courtney.
Keeps it tidy.
Just feels a bit uncomfortable.
Sorry, who was your seconder? Councillor Micklard? Yeah, Councillor Micklard. Are you happy with the wording of that, Councillor Wood? Yeah, okay. Okay, so we will take a vote on the procedural motion moved by Councillor Wood and Councillor Micklard that 1B sector lead Nuvaka Trust be laid on the table until consultation with the Pacifica community. So if you can vote on that aspect now, please. And that has passed, 8 votes for and 3 against. Thank you. So we'll now go back to the original recommendation, obviously without Nuvaka Trust, which now reads that council engage the following organisations through sector lead partnership agreements for the period 1 July to 2025 to 30 June 2028. We've had some speakers. Are there any other speakers that haven't yet spoken to this recommendation? Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to briefly reflect on process as well and what we're hoping to achieve through this, and I'd just say that I have quite an appetite for the review of process and policy, and I think the vote that we've just been through, the conversation we've just been through, highlights that very much, and it goes right from what is a sector. I've heard sector out of people's mouths in the last 10 minutes with about 5 different definitions from 5 different speakers. I think until we have a settled view of what do we mean by sector, what do we mean by lead, how many do we need, etc., we will continue to struggle with this. So absolutely look forward to a review process and elected member engagement in that. It is incredibly important in terms of what is delivered through these organizations to the community and the relationships that are held through those organizations with the broader community as well, and making sure that our actions as council don't disrupt some of those relationships, etc. So very much looking forward to that. We'll see what comes through that in terms of whether there's potential for change that would impact on existing and prior decisions, but I think that's down the track. And on balance, I'm quite comfortable with the 1A that's there and supporting that. Thank you.
So if there are no further speakers, I'll just have a right of reply. Clearly, I support engaging MASH Trust. I'm not convinced that lying Nuvaka Trust on the table has been helpful to this procedure. I think it sets a precedent and changes the way that staff are expected to engage with community before engaging a sector lead organisation that we haven't actually put in the policy. So how we can expect staff to do things differently for one group compared to another, I really don't know. So I'm a bit uncomfortable with the direction that council has, well, the committee has given staff through that, lying that item on the table. Also, it may be, Councillor Barrett, that the definition of sector lead is confused in some people's minds, but certainly my understanding is that it's not a cultural lead or the lead group for that culture. And I thought that came out quite clearly through the questions. So it was a bit disappointing to hear that comment referenced again in some of the arguments. I think, councillors, we have to own our own policies and procedures. We've agreed this policy. We've agreed the procedures. Staff have been acting under delegation accordance with the policy, and I'm not sure what we could have expected them to do differently. So I accept that the timing of this, that Pacifica Reference Group only meeting last night was late notice for them, with this coming to the meeting today. But, having said that, if damage has been done to that relationship, then that damage is already done. And putting the Nuvaka Trust contract on the table until further consultation happens, I can't quite see how that amends any fences, and may put us in a difficult situation with Nuvaka. So I would say I would remain quite unhappy with that decision. Anyway, we will now take the vote on 1A. And that has carried 11 votes for and none against. Right, on to a less controversial topic, possibly, which is item 8, potential locations for a public toilet at Albert Street. So we'll invite Bill Carswell, Activities Manager Property Services, or not Bill, actually, sorry, Glenn, to come and speak to us. Kia ora, Glenn.
Kia ora koutou. Yeah, Mr. Carswell's an apology, Madam Chair, so you're stuck with me, unfortunately. This is a return report as requested from the meeting of 28 August to investigate alternate locations for a public toilet along the river network. That work has been complete. As per the paper, the end of Albert Street remains the preferred location for an additional toilet as per the assessment of the alternate locations and the material canvassed for each one of those options. Was slightly remiss of us just to add a couple extra pieces of information to assist your decision making. So in the funding available section 2 towards the back of the report, we do talk about a total envelope of 474,000, which is the combination of 2 years funding. There is an opportunity cost to that, in that one of the other intended public toilets for next financial year would not be able to be delivered if that full envelope was used to fund the Albert Street toilet location. And there is an opportunity to go to the chamber option and pump out, which would still make it possible to deliver an additional public toilet from next year's financial budget. Happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. I do have a couple of questions. One is that the type of toilet that has to be pumped out, is there the risk of odours and inconvenience, I suppose, to people who live nearby from that?
There is the potential risk of that. So the option that was canvassed in the recommendation towards the back of the report is a full lined service. It's a residential connection because the main in that section, it would be the only connection to, and we wouldn't have the volume to make that effectively work. And it would avoid the risk of odour and other amenity issues, I guess, by having a chamber and a pump out system.
Okay, and with those chamber and pump out systems, presumably the operational costs are more expensive over time?
Not sure. Maybe our manager, Three Waters, could comment on the cost differential.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike Monaghan, manager for Three Waters. I guess the domestic type pump out system would have relatively minor operational costs. It would be electricity costs for the pump station. And then the alternative to having a chamber and a manual truck to come to empty that chamber would have some operational costs that, depending on the frequency and the use of that public toilet.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of the need for a public toilet in this particular place, can you just remind us what the need is or how that's been canvassed?
Through you, Madam Chair, if I could ask our colleague to come down and speak to the need.
Yep. It's a team effort today.
Good morning, Councillors. Aaron Phillips, Activities Manager
Oh,
for Parks.
Aaron, could I just get you to move the microphone a bit closer?
Apologies.
Thank
Good
you.
morning, Councillors. Activities Manager for Parks, Aaron Phillips. The need in this location was based on a couple of drivers. There was an assessment of improvements for access to toilets along the river done in 2017, which identified this location as a gap in the network, and that was covered for you in the previous report in August, which kind of outlined how we came to that conclusion. It also, in the August report, which we won't have in front of you, but it does include some clauses in section 2.2, which outlined some survey work that we had done along the river about peak use trip times at the Albert Street location. That found that at peak times we were getting about 50 people an hour past that location, which estimated that we'd get 110,000 trips past that location in a year. Assuming that equated somewhere between sort of 5 and 10% of people who went past used the toilet, we would expect that we get something like 5 to 30 people, 15 to 30 people a day would use the toilet in that location. The other driver in that location is the work that's taken place in the pine trees. So there's the jumps area for children and the adventure play in the trees, which is featured in Palmy Proud and other publications. That doesn't have any particularly close toileting facilities, the nearest one being at the Fusuba Bridge.
Thank you for that, Aaron. Okay, we'll go to other elected members for questions. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few questions of clarification. In 6.3 on page 28, the officers have recommended option A, with the recommended construction method being a residential grade sewer pump and required repairs to the sewer line. The wording in the recommendation on page 15 just says installation of a single pan toilet. Is that referring to the option, the third option in A? Yeah, so then on the option 3, so I'm looking at the table 1 now on page 19. It's just that there's different wording in different places, and I'm just trying to understand if we're talking about the same thing. So option 3 on table 1 in 3.6 says flushing toilet, wastewater holding tank, no sewer connection. So is option 3 what in the location A what officers are recommending?
Yeah, apologies through Madam Chair for some of the inconvenient labelling and repeated use of options. So we are recommending that Albert Street remains the preferred location, and then the officer recommendation was to take this year's funding envelope and next year's and have that residential line option as the preferred methodology for the toilet itself.
Being option, so you're talking about option 2 or option 3?
Sorry, Councillor, I think maybe if we just put in at the end of the recommendation residential pump station, then that makes it clear rather than referring to option numbers.
So I guess where I'm confused, so that's the $414,000 option, not the 213. So if what that recommendation is referring to is option 2, then I'm just trying to understand why in 6.3 officers have recommended option 3 as the suggested option. It says here option 3 in table 1 in 6.3.
Yeah, that's incorrect. Sorry, Councillor.
So that's not what officers are recommending?
The original recommendation by officers was the $414,000 option, which would give us the best preferred or the best permanent solution in terms of, I guess, the infrastructure solution. So it would mitigate in full any amenity issues. You know, it's more operationally cost effective in the long run. But my earlier comments were to flag that we could go with option 3 in that table, which would also then allow us to deliver another public toilet in the city with next year's budget, if that makes sense.
So have officers changed their view, or is that a typo?
Haven't changed our view, but I think in trying to explain the use of the 2 years funding, we wanted to give you the full, I guess, explanation of the options and the opportunity costs, which were not put in the paper originally.
Okay, I think that's helpful. Thank you.
I'll just, thanks Councillor Naylor for your questions. I'll just head over to the General Manager for a minute. Maybe you could just clarify, because I think the problem is that we've got option 3 written there, that's confused people, but it's actually option 2 that they're recommending. Yeah, I'll just head over to the GM for a comment. Thank you.
Apologies, councillors, for the confusion in the paper. Just confirming that the officer's recommendation is option 2.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just while we're on options, any future proofing or things that are being missed by not going with option 1, and how long is that 1947 pipe likely to lay in the ground?
Through you, Madam Chair, it might be best answered by our manager, Three Waters.
Thank you for the question. It's likely that we wouldn't utilise the 1947 pipe, but use that as a conduit to lay a new pumped pressure main pipe through that existing line.
Thanks. And in terms of future proofing or any other future needs that we might have for these kind of services at that end of Albert Street, are we missing anything?
My understanding, Councillor, is that this project hasn't considered any future use.
Thank you. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at is there any broader consideration around this in terms of potential future developments in that part of the city, or is it simply being viewed in absolute isolation?
Through you, Madam Chair, there's no foreseen additional activity down there with regards to future proofing and the investment being used then for further connections and activity.
Thank you, Glenn. Quite a bit of the discussion last time around when we spent 2 hours on this was around the golf course, and I didn't see a whole lot of reference in this paper to engagement with the golf course, and just wondered if we could get a summary of where that conversation's gotten to.
Through you, Madam Chair, I personally haven't had any engagement with the golf course. I have been briefed on previous conversations when this was before committee and council late last year. And I understand whilst the golf course were interested at the start, those conversations led to them being less inclined to have a toilet located on the golf course.
Thank you. I guess what record do we have of that interaction and view being taken by the golf course? We got things in writing from them? Is it on the back of casual conversation?
I would hope that we have records of those conversations, but I don't have visibility of them this morning.
Okay, thank you. Finally, just wanted to inquire around drinking fountain potential alongside this, and whether that's planned and expected here, or whether that would be additional.
Standard to include drinking fountains with new toilets when they're installed.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In light of Councillor Barrett's questions, I'm just a bit confused. So my understanding was the whole reason that we didn't approve this last year was purely to look at the option of putting this at the golf course. And to have it not even listed here as an option that we've considered, I'm just trying to understand why that is. It feels very odd, given that's what the debate centred around.
Councillor, if you're happy, I'll have a go at answering this, but I do note a little bit of risk around it, and that I wasn't the officer dealing directly with the golf course, but I had some conversations with that officer. The golf course was interested in, initially had some interest in potentially something at the bottom of Ellsworth Street, off the road reserve and in their land. They changed that. In the end, that wasn't something they preferred. Then we were looking at option C, which is on figure 1, page 16, which is on the golf course and at a location that benefited the golf course in terms of distance around the course for golfers. But the challenge with option C for us is it's over the stop bank, and it's an expensive exercise to get a path across the stop bank if you want an accessible level, but has consenting issues, and it's hidden. So it was of interest, I understand, and I am speaking a little bit out of turn, having not had the direct conversations myself, to the golf course, but we don't think it's particularly valuable from a recreation point of view, and it's quite expensive.
Thank you.
Councillor Hancock.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you both. Yeah, some of my questions just in terms of the golf course have just been answered, which is great. So that just leaves me with really just some around the risk management of options B and D. Can you just give us some more commentary just around septic risks and also flood risk, please, for those options?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, option B is on the riverside of the stop bank, but set back into the trees because to minimise the risks for flooding. It still presents some consenting risks, as you see in the report. Horizons Regional Council typically can't answer a question about whether they'll give a consent or not till they receive an application, but they give some guidance that there are risks. So options D and B both had some risks being inside the stop bank that around whether they would or wouldn't be consented. Option B is set back in the trees. We're not particularly enthusiastic about that, given a toilet location set among the trees, while we do accept that the trees are played in as well, but toilets present us with particular risks around vandalism and safety that we're not enthusiastic about B as an option, but we're trying to explore, show that we demonstrate that we've reviewed a number of options. Option D is a little bit safer. It's out in the open if you're familiar with the access of that part of the river. There were a series of large macrocarpa trees in that area that were taken out a number of years ago, but it's relatively, there's still some present, but some of them were removed. It's fairly open. I'd have less concerns about safety in that location, but still not as safe, I guess, in the sense of the bottom of Albert Street has a lot more activity, a lot more overlooking from neighbouring properties. And yeah, and I've probably covered the flooding matter at D already in a general sense.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess just to go back to Councillor Wood's question, I really is around option C. As that is actually on golf course land, obviously that would suggest strongly that we've actually had conversations with the golf club in terms of locating a toilet on golf club land.
Yes, unfortunately the officer's away at the moment that dealt directly with them, so we can't answer that directly, but there definitely was conversations about that location. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much. Cheers. Madam Chair.
Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. Just one further question. The comment that was made that it would be expected to be 15 to 30 people a day use the toilet, which seems quite low to me. Do you have a threshold of expected usage that would justify the development of a new toilet?
No, we've never derived something like that. I did do a back of the envelope calculation just as we were preparing for this meeting to give, because I thought something similar might be asked. Assuming we get to 25 years out of the toilet, at the lower end of 15 people per day, you've kind of got a cost of $3 per person.
How much?
$3 per person, based off a lot of rounding and a back of an envelope in the stands. As we were speaking before, it might be out by 20%. If you were getting the higher end of 30 people per day, it's $1.50 per person using the toilet over the 25 years. I haven't included operational costs, and that was just the capex because it was literally back of the envelope. I'm reasonably comfortable that those are relatively conservative figures. The assumptions made in the previous report about use were based on a 6-hour day, but it was using a peak time survey. In the summer down there, you could get 12 to 14 hours a day of use there, and whether and the peak times might vary. We haven't done a deep statistical dive on this, but I'm comfortable that that range of figures that I'm providing is probably at a lower end of a range if I were to dive deeper into the numbers.
Okay, thank you. And those costings wouldn't include the interest or the...
No, they wouldn't. Sorry, Councillor. It was literally just in the stands 5 minutes ago at a very raw level. Yes.
Thank you. That's good.
Thank you. Just a question from me. When this came to us before, we had objections from residents. if we were to go ahead and approve this now, what relief can we offer to residents for some of the concerns that they presented at the last committee meeting?
We have discussed design, orientation, planting, screening and the like to make it less obvious. Concerns around any invitation or antisocial behaviour being more prevalent because there's a public toilet there. We would monitor and respond in the normal ways that we do with other locations.
Thank you. Question from Councillor Finlay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just looking at the options, just to me, option A would make more sense because you got pipes right there. It's not that much more expensive, and it's right at the end of the road, and people who can access that from cars would make sense. So, why would you count option A out?
Councillor, option A is what has been recommended by staff.
That's what I'm saying. Why would you count it out? Because everyone else is talking about the other options.
Okay, sorry, misinterpreted.
Yeah. Sorry, the other ones, everyone else talking about other options. To me, option A is the sensible one. We've got sewage online. We've got people going to access it from their cars. To me, it's the most common sense way of doing it. So I would support option A.
So what was your question to officers there?
The question to the officers is still, why would you not consider option A over the rest? Sorry? Yeah, A here on my option 1, yeah.
Are you able to answer that? Thank you.
So through Madam Chair, if I understand correctly, the question is around the fully flushing sewer main replacement option, is that the question? The simple reason we haven't recommended that option is just the cost effectiveness. It's outside of budget availability. To replace that whole length of main to provide one public toilet is expensive and problematic. It would be the only connection to that section, so that's why that option wasn't the preferred or recommended option.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That's the end of the question. So thank you for your report and answering questions. I'm going to move the recommendation in the papers that council proceed with applying for a planning and building consent for the installation of a single pan toilet at the end of Albert Street, option 2, residential pump station. Seconded Councillor Hancock. Councillors, I think we've explored other options here. We certainly listened to concerns that we heard from residents, but looking at the other options that are available, they're a lot less practical. They have consenting issues. Some of them are in the floodplain, and it seems to me that we've spent enough time and effort investigating where else this toilet could go, and at this point the best option is to have it at the end of Albert Street with the option of a residential pump station. And I think, we've heard from officers that there'll be some mitigation of loss of visual amenity by design, orientation, planting and screening. And I think that that's probably the best we can offer at this point. So that's why I'm going to be recommending that we go with the end of Albert Street. Is there anyone else who'd like to make a comment? Councillor Mickelad.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Just to echo some of the comments that you've already outlined in your commentary. The reason why I'll also be supporting this is largely because of the issues that have been outlined as weaknesses or challenges in other options. I think the option before us, option 2, is operationally sound and cost-effective by my lights. And I think the reason why I was more inclined towards this option was around the visibility issues that the other options had, and also the safety concerns and accessibility issues, especially with having one by the golf course, which had which people had to kind of access by going through the stop bank, and also the resource consent issues that that option presented, and the risk to being affected by flooding events and the likes. So overall, I think option 2 actually makes sense and is operationally sound. And I think out of all the options, that's actually the one that's more cost effective. And I understand that some of the residents in that community or in that part of Ruahine Street have expressed concerns around potential illegal activities that might happen or visibility issues that they might have had. But this is what I think we can offer. And we've taken the views into consideration, but given the options that we have, I think that's the only thing that we can offer around that place. And I don't want them thinking that we haven't listened to them. We did listen to them. We've heard their concerns. But from a cost-effective perspective, this is the best option. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no further speakers, we'll go straight to the vote, I think. Annual Youth Wellbeing Update on page 29, and that is brought to us by Remy, and Remy, Youth Services Team Leader, and Stephanie Belvin, Manager Community Development.
Morena koutou. Stephanie Valvin, Manager Community Development. This is the first annual update on the progress of the Youth Wellbeing Programme. Includes trends, new initiatives and activities of the last 12 months, and a summary of the annual Youth Wellbeing Forum, which just occurred in April 2025. Next steps and focus areas for the coming year are also highlighted, and I'm going to hand to Remy to briefly highlight a couple of these key developments.
Awesome. Kia ora koutou. The last 12 months, as we know, has been a time of change and complexity for services. Despite this, the sector has continued to innovate and adapt to new settings. A couple of highlights. One of the highlights from this period has been the Kick for Seagulls pilot program, which is a partnership between UCOL, Y Central and PNCC with support from Oranga Tamariki and Police Youth Aid. The first 17-week program saw 8 young people complete the term and walk the UCOL stage earlier this year to receive their qualification in front of their peers, friends and whānau. A number of rangatahi from this course have continued into higher education at UCOL, having enrolled in automotive and hair and beauty, which is really cool. It's been really amazing to see the turnaround in these young people who, with the right support and their own hard work, have created a new trajectory for themselves in the world. The second pilot is running currently, and enrolment for a third term is also underway. A second pilot to highlight in the last year has been the Pounamu project, which is the joining of what was previously 2 youth networks led separately by Youthline and Sport Manawatu. The project aims to work with youth service organisations to host bi-monthly networking across the city. This pilot has seen great momentum, and we're looking forward to working alongside these lead groups to support better connectivity, especially for new kaimahi in the sector. Other networks have also strengthened throughout the year, including Blue Light, whose aim is to work collaboratively to improve access and support for our tamariki and whānau in the city. The Palmer Youth Council has also strengthened their focus and have been shaping a great plan for the coming year. In relation to the proposed Youth Development Reference Group, officers have focused on supporting existing networks like Pounamu, Blue Light and Youth Council, rather than setting up an additional parallel group. The sector has continued to tell us that they're stretched for capacity and coordination hours, and so the appetite for doubling up on activity is low. The last thing to briefly highlight is that we've held another really successful youth wellbeing forum. We've had over 80 people from 46 services attend this year. It would not have been possible if not for the collective effort of the sector and a number of key organisations, including Youthline, Sport Manawatu, Highbury Whānau Centre, Best Care Whakapai Hauora, Think Hauora, Y Central across Te Wakahuia, Police Youth Aid, and obviously our awesome council teams. There was great engagement on the day and many rich conversations which have shaped our plan of action for the coming year. Happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Finlay.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just looking at the barriers for booking community centres.
Councillor Finlay, sorry, I think we're not on that item. This is the youth wellbeing.
Sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks both for the report and really encouraging to hear the huge range of activity that's going on there. I think my question was kind of about that background context that you highlighted in your report in 3.3 about the concurrent factors. I think first I wondered if we'd had council's economist involved in pulling this together. It seems quite technical. So where did that bit of the report come from? Was that
3.3, you're talking about?
3.3, yeah.
So that was information. No.
Okay.
So yeah, we get
Just
the
you.
information ourselves. Yeah,
Excellent.
it's
Well,
all
so that's
publicly
good. That means you
available.
can answer my next question, which is about the last bullet point there, which is about employers appear to be preferring an unskilled adult perceived to have lower training or pastoral care needs, even compared to a semi-skilled or skilled young person. That just seems to be counterintuitive to me, that an unskilled adult would have lower training needs than a semi-skilled or skilled young person. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so what we're hearing from employers is that there's a number of pastoral care needs that young people need when they enter into the workforce that perhaps industry is not ready or prepared to support. And so it's easier to train an adult in that space than a young person coming through.
So what I think I'm hearing you say that it's the focus is on the perceived pastoral need, which might then impact on their trainability.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. That's really helpful.
Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thank you both for the report. I just want to perhaps just touch on your view in terms of our progress towards better alignment across the youth sector. Like, we've had 2 youth wellbeing forums now, so we're starting to progress. So, yeah, just your take, please, in terms of, are we getting better alignment?
Kia ora. Yes, I believe we are getting better alignment. Youth work and youth development is relational, and so having those spaces where we connect face to face and really talk about our mahi and the challenges and how we can overcome those is integral, really, to being efficient and responding to the need.
Okay, thank you. And the second part really is just around the youth development reference group and the fact that we're not going to progress that at this point in time. So do you feel that we've actually got reasonable conduits so that we can actually kind of, I guess, intuitively understand the changes that are actually happening within the youth sector?
I do. Yes, I think with increased capacity within the youth space as well, having the ability to go out and attend meetings and be across what's happening in other spaces has been really important. So I do.
And do you think the sector is actually growing in confidence in that regard?
I think it's work in progress. Yeah.
Yep, thank you. Madam Chair.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kia ora koutou. Thank you both for the work here and the report. Just interested in paragraph 3.22, which is the big table that's got the themes, the commentary, and the action plan. I'm just interested in the action plan side of that. Do those actions have owners? How will those actions be tracked?
So the intent is that the youth services team are the owner of those actions. Most of them reference sort of a coordination role or a support role of the sector. So that will sit with the youth services team. In terms of tracking, was that your second question? So we will come back again next year and provide an update on how those actions have progressed.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Zabellan.
Thank you. Good morning. I was wondering, at 3.17, there's a mention there of the Youth Council realigning their program to create better pathways for youth voice and to contribute to collective impact work, and I just wondered if we could hear a bit more about that.
Yes, so a big portion of the beginning of this year has been supporting Youth Council to go through a recruitment process, come together, do induction, and really build their skills and understanding of what good representation might look like, collective decision making, all those cool things. And they've shaped a bit of a plan for the year. I know the intention is to come out and talk to councillors about that. One of the things on the plan is to do a youth expo, hopefully in August, to go out and canvass and talk to young people about what's on top for them. The intention then is to bring that together with the Youth Wellbeing Forum in 2026. Lots of great things. Outreach has been up, so they've just had 27,000 views, I believe, on their social media this last month, which has been awesome. So that's been a big focus, their outreach, and really diversifying their representation. So understanding, you know, if we're not the right voice at this time, who can we speak to in order to get that view and feedback into the opportunities that we have here at Council.
Councillor McAlard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, team. One of my questions has been answered around the pathways, but I just have one question around 3.4. It says that while these challenges are complex and ongoing, there have been positive developments in the sector locally over this period. And with new collective impact and cross-sector collaboration producing stronger relationships, particularly with Kamahi and organizations newer to the sector and positive early outcomes for young people. Can you just expand more around this? Like, in terms of the cross-sector relationship that are being formed and forged at the moment, can you just expand a little bit about how that's looking like and what are the challenges that you're facing in that sector, I mean, in that, from that perspective?
So the challenge really, I think, one of the big ones is obviously time for the sector, having time to come together and actually talk about what's on top. A lot of the relationships in the sector have been historical post-COVID, so we've been relying on those historical relationships and service referrals and that sort of thing. And so much like the rest of the country, actually, we're sort of rebuilding those connections and creating opportunities to be face-to-face. Again, that's why I guess the forum is so important. But there's lots of momentum for other spaces to happen throughout the year for Kaimahi to connect, like Pounamu, like Blue Light. And so I think there is a recognition across the sector that that is actually really important. And so making the time, prioritising the time to be in the room when those opportunities arise.
Last question. Do we sort of have any sort of, do we have any sort of relationship with the Ministry for Youth or any sort of guidelines that we get from them as well in relation to that?
Yes, yeah. So the regional coordinator attended the forum, which was really cool. So we do have a relationship with Ministry of Youth Development. Last year, I believe, they released a document that outlined what good engagement with young people might look like for the nation. So that's a really good thing to have a look at as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Councillor Mosh, oh sorry, Deputy Mayor.
Tēnā koe, Madam Chair. Tēnā kōrua, Remy, kōrua ko Stephanie. Thank you for the report. Just with regards to 3.13, where we talk about the Pounamu project, you talk about meeting regularly. How regularly?
So I believe it's been bi-monthly. They've had four meetings so far.
Lovely. Do you coordinate that?
So we assist Youthline across and Sport Manawatu to coordinate.
Okay, ka pai, well done. And secondly, with 3.14, accessibility for neurodiverse young people, I commend that. I just wanted to ask, has there anything that's come out of that that could, a recommendation or a development where you can see more resources needed? Have they asked for more resourcing or support?
I would need to go and speak to the coordinators, especially of that group. But for now, having a space where they can come that's free, accessible, and responsive to the needs of those young people is what they've requested, and it seems to be going really well.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. That's the end of the questions. Thank you very much. So I'm happy to move the recommendation that the committee receive the memorandum titled Annual Youth Wellbeing Update to the Community Committee on 21st of May 2025 and seconded by Councillor Hancock. And I'll open up for any comments. Just a brief comment from me. I think that this is a really good piece of work that's underway. I'm grateful for staff for engaging with it so well. And I think I was at the Youth Wellbeing Forum recently and there was a real buzz in the air of those who were present, and you could really understand the value for people in being able to get together. And I noted that lots of people who were attending weren't aware of other groups or the work that they were doing. So even just getting people together in one room was effective, I thought, never mind all of the other things that are going on as well, the different projects and so on. So I think it's a piece of work that's will continue to bring benefits, and thank you very much for doing it. Lots of comments coming in. Councillor Zabellin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I absolutely agree. This report just shows an extraordinary amount of work that's been done with a very small amount of money, and we've got a lot to show for it, which is just really exciting. And I think it's showing we're having some success at being the fence at the top of the cliff rather than the ambulance at the bottom of it. So in my opinion, this is money very well spent. And I just want to say a big thank you to Remy and to Kate and to Jazz and the rest of the awesome team for just going above and beyond with what resources you've got to deliver actual, tangible results in people's lives. It's awesome.
Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Councillor Zabellin was actually obviously reading my notes. No, I just really want to acknowledge and thank Remy and all the community development team really for the amazing work that you're actually doing. I was going to use the word extraordinary, but both words are really quite fitting. In this report, there are some examples of amazing collective impact work which is actually being done. It's still in development, and I'm sure that everybody involved in the program actually has got a vision for what is actually possible going forward. I think we can be really confident that our city's attention for our young people in the city is actually on point, and that we're in a lot better space than other places because we have taken this decision to actually make this small investment to make big improvements. In terms of the Safety Advisory Board, which I chair, our youth wellbeing is a standing item on our agenda, and it is in focus across all of the organisations that are contributing to achieving much better, much more positive outcomes for our young people. And our young people are our future, so therefore it is a really worthy investment in the small investment that we do make is absolutely well spent. So thank you very much for the work that you do, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. Even though Councillor Hancock can't read my notes from there, he can read my mind, obviously. I just endorse everything that fellow councillors have said, and thank you very much to Remy and Stephanie and the team. Obviously, you know, my career has been teaching young people and working with young people. I get feedback for those who are members of the Youth Council, and they're invigorated and excited about things that are happening. I acknowledge our councillors who are on that, who are supporting and mentoring them, Councillor Spellin and Councillor Wood. I haven't missed out, and Councillor Michelad. Thank you so much for the support you give them as well. What I wanted to say was it's quite enlightening when we look at the demographic, isn't it, that we see Palmerston North is ahead of other cities in the country. We're, you know, a lot younger across the range in our population, and that's something to be mindful of. But I think that the initiatives that are in place are very, very positive, and I particularly like those projects that look at the diversity within the community of our youth and the neurodiverse group coming together and creating or meeting their needs. I really, you know, I'm grateful for that. And likewise, I think that clearly it's relational, but the networking, not only with the young people, with the youth, but also with those who are helping them is paramount and obviously positive. So keep up the good work, and thank you. Kia ora, tēnā koe, Madam Chair.
Kia ora. Councillor Michelad.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to echo what everybody else has said also, it seems that we're all reading from each other's notes. I wasn't able to, I just want to thank, first of all, the team for the work that you guys are doing around this space as well. And I wasn't able to attend the Youth Wellbeing Forum because we're in South Taranaki for the LGNZ Zone 3 meeting. But I just wanted to say that, you know, I think the officers for the report, I think it gives us a better understanding of how we can better support the youth sector proactively and also respond to trends and issues that arise. While I believe that the youth is the hope of our future, a strong youth sector which supports young people to thrive contributes greatly to our vision, the council's vision and goals that we've set for ourselves. While I understand that accountability for young people is a shared responsibility across all government levels, as a city councillor, I believe that we have a social responsibility under the Local Government Act to ensure that our young people, our rangatahi, are well supported and enabled to lead productive and fulfilling lives as well. So very much encouraged by what I'm reading from the report and the positive outcomes that we're getting from those forums and the feedback that we're getting from the young people as well. And I know that there's a lot of work also going on in the Youth Council and fellow councils that are involved in that as well, contributing ideas on how we can better improve as well. Youth engagement in the community and the likes. So overall, thank you very much for the report. Really enjoyed it. And yeah, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Well, that's the end of the comments. Just to sum up, I think it's a big well done, really, to your team. And also, we're quite excited about the work and the results that are still to come. So well done. And it was remiss of me earlier not to acknowledge Councillor Hancock, who was the driving force behind this being set up in the first place. So just like to give credit where it's due. Thank you. Right, with that, we will take the vote, please. And that has passed, 11 votes for and none against. Thank you. Right, I think we'll just take one more item before we break for morning tea. So this is item 10, the Community Centres Delivery Review. And that is presented by Amy Files, Community Development Advisor, and Stephanie Velvin, Manager Community Development. Steph's having a busy day. Kia ora korua.
You get me this time. Morning, councillors. Amy Viles, Community Development Advisor. We've undertaken a review of the current community centres delivery model following a recommendation in the Community Spaces Research Report in 2022 and the Community Spaces Feasibility Study in 2023. We undertook a variety of methods to engage with community to understand how well the current model meets community needs and fulfills the intended purpose, and to identify opportunities to improve the efficiency of the model overall. We would like to highlight the significant contribution to the delivery of community outcomes of the committees who largely volunteer their time and experience to the successful running of the community centres. Overall, the review found that the current model is working well, offering a variety of facilities for a range of activities, including cultural events, local clubs, and social gatherings, with high levels of user satisfaction across a range of measures. The review also found that the management committee-based structure remains an effective way to manage the current model. While the centres serve their purpose for many users, there is room for growth, and the review identified areas of improvement including marketing, booking systems, consistent access to technology, and reinvestment of support for community-led development initiatives. Identified actions for improvement will be progressed in partnership with community centre committees, collectively at the next Community Centres Hui, and individually with each committee. Thank you, and we're happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Amy. Councillor Finlay, your time has come.
Thank you. Confusion. Never mind. In graph 2, I'm quite concerned at some of the outcomes there. First of all, how many responses did you have from people who identified that they could not proceed with community centre bookings?
I'm not able to do the quick maths on that, sorry, but 20% of 220 respondents.
20%, okay. So, and 48% of them couldn't get a booking because of the availability. So from that, can we presume that we have insufficient community centres in our city?
No. I can give you a couple of examples. For a casual user, say I wanted to book a party at a community centre, I would need to go onto the council website, hunt up a community centre, find if it was available, contact that booking officer. If that one was not available, then I would need to contact another booking officer from another community centre. So there is good availability for one-offs, and we have high usage of our community centres too. So an alternative example is if I was a group that wanted to book a community centre for ongoing reoccurring bookings, it's tricky to find slots. And it's tricky to find slots and recurring availability because the usage of the centres is so high.
So the organisations are having trouble getting into community centres?
Yes, some are.
And the other one that worried me too was the cost. Now, if a new organisation tried to get hold of or you make use of a community centre, and the cost problem, is there nothing in council where they can apply for assistance or remission from that charge?
Committees address that in varying ways. So they have some discretion to be able to provide discounted rates to community groups, but the view on affordability varied. So some people found that they were quite affordable, so it depended on your view of affordability. Some said there's a range of costs as well. Some are cheaper to book than others.
So, making it simple for you, an example, say a group wanted to form and they wanted to form a new group, and it's their first public meeting. And there was no funds available. Is there nowhere that they could apply for assistance from council to have that meeting in our community centre?
So occasionally we have groups come to our funding programs, such as the Community-Led Initiatives Fund. So we've just recently had a cultural group who are wanting to gather for the first time, wanting to use a community centre as their venue of choice. So they've built that into their funding application, and that's been approved as part of the funds that we've granted them. So there are avenues, provided they meet the other criteria of the fund as well. We don't have a fund that's just for community centre booking costs. Yeah.
Right. And one last question, do you see when the MMC moves into the bottom floor that any easing on the situation with the availability?
Potentially, yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few questions, if that's okay. Just starting on page 41, in 2.16, it talks about Village Valley Centre being the exception in the way that it operates in terms of the funds generated by the hire of the centre being held by the management committee. So it seems that perhaps their model is looks a little bit different to the other ones from what I understand. Going forward, what is the assumption in terms of the delivery model for any new community hubs that will be built in terms of that revenue?
I think we've highlighted it at a different part of the report that we do currently have a gap in our policy, support and funding policy, around how we might work with community hubs. So that's something that we're going to develop.
Yeah, that was my next question. Thank you. So yeah, under the actions for improvement, I see on page 47 some commentary around resourcing allocation and sustainability. I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to, but it talks about the booking fee revenue not being fully optimised, and the scope, that there's a scope for the amount of financial support for community-led initiatives to be increased. And also that some community centres are sitting on high levels of reserves. And under the grey part that's actions for improvement, it talks about consider how a percentage of income returned to council could cover more facilities management costs. And I'm just wondering, how would a decision like that be made, and would that come back to elected members?
Yeah, we're still working through that. It's just sort of something that we've identified as, let's explore this further. We don't necessarily have the answers or a clear way forward on that as yet. I can't answer the question about whether that would need to come back through council. Looking at.
I'll just pass over to the GM.
Kia ora, councillors. If you'd like us to bring that back, we can.
Thank you, that would be good. And just also looking at the next steps on page 48 under 6.2, talks about an appropriate time for any future review would be after the new community hubs are operational. And just given that time frame in the LTP is sort of year 7, goes right through to year 7, would we be expecting that there would be no further review until over 7 years away?
No, so we were anticipating sort of after the Pacifica and multicultural hubs are up and running, that would be a good time to have another look at how the model's working.
Okay, that makes more sense. And I just had one further question on page 43. At the top there, it talked about the Roslyn Community Hub report, which came to the council meeting 2 weeks ago. And when that report came, I asked the question about whether the thinking would include merging the Roslyn Library with the community hub, and officers confirmed that that would be part of the consideration. is that part of the consideration with the development of the Awapuni Community Hub?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
So the Roslyn Community Hub report came 2 weeks ago, and I asked officers, was merging the Roslyn Library with the Community Hub part of the consideration of looking at how to develop
Yes.
that? And I had asked Susan Beattie also, who presented, and she was favourable, and officers also confirmed that that would be part of the consideration of the development of the Community Hub. And so I'm wondering, given that response, is it correct to assume that that might be the thinking with other community hubs such as Awapuni, or is each one decisions made in a separate way? Or is this, I mean, because this report is about the model, and I'm wanting to understand what the assumptions are going
Sure.
into some of those new community hubs.
Yeah.
About what the model might look like, whether it would incorporate the library and merge the library, or whether that wouldn't happen. I'm just asking that question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for confirming. So yes, the intention is to include the Awapuni Library in the Awapuni Community Library Hub. So that would be, discontinuing the current site. With the Awapuni Community Centre, that has really high usage, and it has really high usage from recreational groups that are also using the tennis courts next door as well. So I think that would be something that we'd need to explore after the new community hub is up and running, about whether both facilities were still needed.
And so when would we expect any thinking come back to council in terms of what that model might look like for Awapuni?
Yeah, I might invite property to come and answer the question.
Glenn Bunny, manager property. Very new into the community hub space, so I probably can't give you a complete answer, councillor. In principle, we are looking at co-location for different activities, for vibrancy, critical mass, cost effectiveness for operating, etc. as a principle. But for specific community hub projects at this stage, I'm not sure when we'd bring that back, but we can certainly receive an invite or an instruction to do so within a reasonable timeframe.
Okay. Final question, Madam Chair, and just given the concern in the community that some libraries might close down, would the communication around a change in model to be incorporated within a community hub, would that be clear to the community that that didn't mean libraries were being closed down?
So there's been extensive community engagement in the lead up to the current program with the library and community hub development. So, for example, with Awapuni, the Awapuni community are well aware, and they were part of the feasibility study and supportive of the proposal to merge into a larger facility.
Thank you. That's all from me.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is about your big table of findings and then the next steps. And Amy, you mentioned this in your lovely brief opening to the report. So you say in the next steps, those will be implemented as part of the existing operational support. I just wanted to get an idea for the time frame over which you saw those next steps being implemented.
As capacity allows is probably the most honest question, but from today we will meet with our community centre committees individually, so they are each allocated a community development advisor, and we've already been discussing the findings with them. And then we've got a community centres gathering planned where we bring the committees together to collectively look at what the findings are. The intention is that we work together on those outcomes that we've identified. I'd just like to make a point too regarding the volunteer base of community centre committees. So the expectation is not to increase the load for them, but that it would be more officer-led.
Appreciating that the answer to this might be different for different community centres, but what in that long list of actions for improvement would be the priority areas, do you think?
The booking system is the first area of focus, yeah.
Great to know. Thanks for your report.
Councillor Zabellin.
Thank you. I just had one question, which is, you've noted that the volunteer contribution is basically how we can provide these facilities in a really affordable way. Can we put a sort of rough dollar figure on what kind of operational costs we would be incurring if we didn't have a willing volunteer base, and what might that do to the hireage fees? To try and sort of monetize the value these volunteers deliver for us.
Not easily, but we could have a crack with our committees and, yeah, I guess looking at how often they meet, the kinds of activities that they deliver, the amount of hours. If that was something that you want, but it would take some time and obviously some staff resource to do that.
Yeah, sure, I appreciate that. I'm just curious as to whether that's something that was an easily identifiable way to, for us to appreciate in money terms the value that they bring to us. If we have some centres that are run by volunteers, but then you've said in your report there are some that are more staff managed. So do we have that kind of data in terms of the staff input for Ashurst, for example?
The amount of allocation that the Ashurst Library allocates? Not currently, no.
Cool, thank you. Just curious, thank you.
Councillor Mickelard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, staff. Just a quick question. Coming back on the actions for improvement on the list before us, I've got some questions around accessibility, affordability, and the functionality of all those community groups. Will there be an update progress report to sort of like give us an indication of the stuff that have been actioned, or will that be part of the review that you will be bringing to us when the new community hubs are operational?
If elected members would like an update at a later date, then we can do that.
Yeah, sure.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Amy and Stephanie. With regards to 2.22, I noticed that you talk about the non-council owned community centre provision and name Hokowhitu Village Centre, Longburn Community Centre and Linton Community Centre. Clearly, those non-council owned community centres are well used and utilised and provide the same sort of provision as our council ones as our council owned ones do. With regards to Longburn Community Centre, do we own that?
No.
Okay, and I noticed that Longburn School provides the primary community hub for the village, and I'm aware that Longburn is one of the oldest villages in Palmerston North, community places. I just wondered, do we make any contribution, or do we control or assist the community utilising that? Because clearly it looks like that's the only place that they utilise out there on offer. So do we give any support for the fact that we can't provide anything out there ourselves?
We have a relationship out there, and we work with the community, what Amy does. We don't provide any sort of cost offsetting or anything like that for the school hall or the facility. I understand that we support the school in some other ways, maybe through parks. If Kathy wanted to make a comment through the chair, potentially.
Kathy Deaver, Title Manager, Parks and Reserves. We undertake the mowing out in Longburn for the school. That is under an agreement, but it's a cheaper cost than they would themselves. We also undertake the playground inspections for the playground and help them with any work that's required on that if there's anything that comes up during that inspection.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Kia ora.
Councillor Naylor, you're back in the queue.
It's just one further question I forgot to ask. In relation to the resourcing allocation on page 47, when it says that the community centres are sitting on high levels of reserves, I'm just wondering approximately how much we're talking about there. And also just the booking fee revenue not being fully optimised, just wondering in each year how much total booking fee revenue we're talking about across all the facilities.
I don't have those figures to hand, but we could get them to you.
Thank you, that'd be great.
Deputy Mayor.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. Thank you for tolerating this, me coming back in. I just want to know, with the booking system and with functionality in the table there, you mention at the top of page 47, work with community centres to install improved technology as needed to ensure better consistency of provision. Is there something down the track or a desire to see a integrated app that under the Smart Cities perhaps label for us to have it integrated so it's the one platform for booking?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Finlay.
Sorry to come back in. Just a very quick question. Do any of our community centres not have an active committee running them?
Yes, the Village Valley Centre in Ashurst is currently managed by the community librarian at Ashurst Library.
Milton has a committee?
Yes.
Thank you.
Right, that brings us to the end of the questions. Thank you very much. So we have the recommendation that the committee receive the memorandum entitled Community Centres Delivery Model Review, presented to the Community Committee on 21st of May 2025, which I'm happy to move, and Councillor Hancock will second. And we've got an additional recommendation from Councillor Michelad, seconded by Councillor Naylor, that the Chief Executive provide a 6-monthly progress update report on identified actions for improvement with regard to community centres. I'll just ask the GM if there's any comment on this second recommendation.
Would that be, just wondering if that's a regular occurrence? Happy to do it. That's fine.
Okay, so if that is to be a one-off, we just need to amend that to, so that the Chief Executive provide a one-off progress update. Are you happy with that, Councillor Michelad? Yeah, okay. Do you want to talk to your additional recommendation first? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I just want to thank the staff for the report that they've provided. I think they've provided a laundry list of stuff or challenges that need to be addressed as well. And they're doing a good job of tracking this as well, which is great. But I just thought that, providing this sort of recommendation would just be pretty straightforward in making sure that, we ensure that these action plans or these actions do not fall off the radar going forward or the wayside. And also just to ensure that we meet the needs of the community. So when I look at the functionality issues identified here, a lot of the concerns were raised around a number of community centres not, needing to improve to have technology or the latest or new technology, or at least an expectation to install improved technology in those facilities. And I've hired some of them, and some of them do not have microphones sometimes. And I think it's, as a council, I think it's also our responsibility to make sure that we meet those needs for different community use and that sort of thing as well. So, so simple recommendation just to make sure that these action plans are followed through and that we get something positive out of it. Pretty simple. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor McCall, just a question from staff. Now it's changed to provide a one-off progress update report. Would that be in a year's time? I think 6 months might be a bit short to get much traction. So a one-off progress report next year, would that be okay? Okay, thank you. Just so that we get that locked in. Councillor Finlay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I personally am concerned at the lack of community centres we have in our city. So many halls are booked continually, it's almost impossible to get a slot in. I'm involved slightly with the Senior Citizens Centre. It's just booked out continually, you just can't get in there. We have got the MMC coming in down below, that'll take a little bit of pressure off it. But I think we need, as a city, not this year obviously, but to look at the future of our growing suburban areas and what we have as far as community centres. I look at, we've got an old hall in Kelvin Grove that is really old and it's been moved around a couple of times. We've got a huge growth in that area of the city. We've got a huge growth in Summerhill. We're looking at other areas too. So I really think as a council, at the next LTP, we need to look seriously at our community centres for two things. One, to update them where possible and possibly planning for at least another 2 community centres in our city. It's something we as a council need to keep on our mind. I do realise there's a cost and it's the ratepayers that will have to pay for it, but it's also the ratepayers that use it. Thank you.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not venturing into LTP debate at this stage. I want to say thank you for the report, and my reflection on that was that it provided a real deep dive into one service provision, one element of how our community accesses those really important community spaces. And clearly, council has a lot of skin in the game here in this community centres, and we all know that they're not without their problems. We rely heavily on volunteers to run it, and even then, there are costs. But they also sit alongside service provision like our libraries. Our community libraries also often offer meeting room spaces, for example, and also private provision comes into this space for meeting rooms, events, often at low cost, some even free to my knowledge, and providing some of the services that our own community centres offer. So I suppose my reflection is, in this wider debate that we've gone into, that these community centres are managed by, largely, volunteer committees who are connected with the needs of that particular community. And the service provision is directed at that. So it might be that they don't offer certain things because maybe that's not important in their community. Or maybe it is a cost issue and we haven't quite got to the bottom of that yet. But I'm very comfortable with the service that we're currently offering. I think we're doing a really good job. Our community development team are doing a great job in supporting those management committees. And I'm not seeing a problem that needs fixing here. And I would hate to go out there with a solution looking for a problem.
Thank you. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to acknowledge this report as being really useful and a really good summary of what's working well as some smaller areas where we can improve. And I think any obviously also just appreciate the huge volunteer effort that goes into making these this work. Going forward, I think it is really useful for us to have a good understanding about what the assumptions of our model is, and to be clear about that, particularly with having community hub developments in our plan. And from my perspective, I think it's also really useful and timely to look at ensuring that the revenue is used to the best utilise and to enhance the effectiveness of community services. So I support the comments that are in here in terms of officers looking to consider percentages of that income returning to council when council is covering all the costs of the maintenance, the renewals, as well as the capital costs, and then seeing that some community centres are sitting on high levels of reserve. I think that's a useful thing to be looking at. I think also in light of the concern that's been raised in the community in recent weeks about fear of closing down libraries, it's really good to have an understanding of the thinking of potentially merging libraries with community hubs, those new community hubs that are in our plans. And I think it's really important that we ensure that the communication that goes out there is very clear about perhaps the intention of asking questions around the costs or leases, etc., in light of those community hub developments. So I think where assumptions are made, it can be quite unfortunate for what the community might understand from that. So I'm really supportive of what this is doing and also supportive of continuing a further update on this to ensure that some of the actions are in line with what elected members are comfortable with if there are to be changes.
Just a couple of comments from me. Thank you very much for the review. I think it was really useful and timely. And part of, I guess, what I'd call like general housekeeping of how we're doing things and whether or not any improvement needs to be made. I think it was quite heartening to see how much people value their community centres and how important they are to the community as a facility that they can use. We're very grateful to the volunteer community committees that help administer them. And it's quite a lot of work liaising with people and sorting out keys and being available for difficulties and so on. So thank you to those people. It was good to see that some small improvements have been identified, and we'll look forward to seeing how progress goes with updating those. Bearing in mind, as staff said, that we're working with volunteer committees, and also staff have got BAU to do as well. So we won't be expecting huge changes within a very short space of time. Councillor McLeod, did you want to have any right of reply? Okay, we will. Is everyone happy for us to take these two together? Yeah, so we'll take these two together then for the vote. Thank you. And that's carried, 11 votes for and none against. So we will take a break now for morning tea, and we'll be back in here at 11:10. Thank you. All good to go? Okay, kia ora no. We will move on to item 11, which is the Council Infrastructure Accessibility Initiatives, presented by Glenn O'Connor, Manager Transport and Development, and Cathy Dever-Todd, Manager Parks and Reserves. Kia ora koroa.
Good morning, councillors, and thank you for the opportunity to present on all the wonderful initiatives we've been doing in infrastructure to help improve accessibility within our community. Before I get started on the report, I just want to talk about a correction that Karen Naylor, Councillor Naylor, has brought to our attention. And that is, I apologise, but when I developed this report, I used the background from a previous report and assumed that that background was correct. This is in relation to how this issue was originally came to council, and the report refers to it coming through a long-term plan process. Actually, it came directly from the Disability Reference Group itself back in 2020 and came to council that way, and at that time there was a resolution that council undertakes assessment of all facilities and infrastructure. So I apologise for that, and I'd like you to just make that correction. So this report just outlines the work that we have been doing in the property space since that last review report that you had, which identified the accessibility gaps, and there's an update there from our property division on how they're progressing within the budget limitations on addressing those issues. I just want to talk briefly about the parks component, and then I'll hand over to my colleague. So in the parks, we haven't currently got a formal assessment, but our staff on an annual basis do our levels of service assessment across our parks, and one of the criteria we look at is access. As highlighted in the report, access for parks is a little bit problematic because we can talk in three components: access to the park, access through the park, and access to the facilities that are on the park. And as you would appreciate, grass surfaces are quite difficult to provide access across. So we undertake a number of programs, and I've outlined the work and provided an example there of some of the things that we've been doing as accessibility components as we've done our work. Recently, we have identified an assessment tool that we will look to use in a formal capacity to see how we can look at an accessibility assessment. We would intend to do that in the next financial year. I'll hand over to my colleague.
Madam Chair, councillors, thank you, Cathy, for the introduction. Glenn O'Connor, Manager Transport. Transport is still very much in the planning stages of the disability assessment. We're working with the Disability Reference Group to understand their needs and wants, and specifically the plan that they want to undertake around how and what assets to audit first. The Disability Reference Group met very recently, and I'm regrouping with the co-chairs of that group later this week just to confirm the progress and have discussions about a provider and a scope. So we'll be able to report back on that at the next meeting.
Thank you both. I'll open up for questions. I've got a couple of questions myself. There's a number of references throughout the report on lack of budget or no specific budget for this or that. Has this work been, I guess, slowed down through lack of specific budget?
Sorry, can I just have a point of clarification? Are you talking about the accessibility work or resolving the issues that have been identified?
So under 3.8, the priority A action items will be addressed under the following programmes, and then it says there's things like there's no specific budget for this work and there's no specific budget for that work.
Correct. There is so in general in the program, accessibility is normally addressed as part of a renewal program or another upgrade. Where those budgeters for new work or upgrades have been removed or limited by council decisions, that would be a case in which there wouldn't be budget, but would also be the case that if other unexpected renewals came up within the portfolio that were of higher priority, for example, a health and safety issue, they may consume budget that would otherwise be available for accessibility issues.
So, I mean, are you signalling through this report that we need to consider making additional budget available to achieve accessibility or not?
No, I don't think we're signalling that at this stage through this report.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question I had was around whether or not there's an intention to report back on this annually, because there's no, as far as I can see in the report, there's no sort of next steps to do an annual update on this.
There isn't an intent to report back on this annually, but quite open to the suggestion of an annual report. The work with this is, it's fairly well fall into an annual cycle for property because they can report on the work they've done. Some of the work within transport, obviously, we've got to get that accessibility audit up and running, and I don't know how that would fit in with an annual reporting for property. So I think regular might be a more appropriate term. I guess I couldn't say to you which committee we would next come back to at what stage, because each of the work programs are in different phases.
So if we were to put up an additional recommendation that the committee receive regular reporting on progress, would that be okay?
That would be very helpful.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Kathy and Glenn. Just a couple of questions, just really around the priority B works. Now, it appears that we have no approved budget for the priority B works. So have we done any scoping in terms of sizing that for future budgets, or any understanding of the programming of, or potential programming of that work?
Yes, so that type of work for priority B would be incorporated within the asset management planning process. And so you would expect to see that in the draft asset management plan that informs the draft LTP. As you appreciate, from there then a decision would need to be made of the priority of that against other programs across council, but we certainly would incorporate, fully cost it for the draft LTP process.
Yeah, thank you. So at this stage we've got no understanding of the sizing of that at all in terms of cost?
No, we don't have it sizing for the cost right across.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Kathy and Glenn. A couple of questions. Last week's meeting made some changes around a number of line items. Just wondered if there's any flow and effect of last week's changes in terms of resourcing available.
Thank you, Councillor. Certainly for transport, as a matter of course, any new or renewals items consider accessibility as a matter of course. So the likes of one change front of mind for transport, our last week's meeting was around bus stops, bus shelters. We would be able to accelerate some of that work around improving accessibility to bus shelters where we were putting up the new shelters.
Thank you.
In relation to parks, there were no changes made to any of the programs that are outlined in the report, so we're fairly well on track with that. In regards to property, probably the bigger impact was the initial adoption of the draft annual budget, and as we've already identified, not all of the work is funded at the moment, but no further changes were made last week.
Great, thank you for those confirmations. Glenn, I was just interested reading about the scope conversation around the transport audit. Could we take from that that there is an intent for the scope to be less than comprehensive?
Transport has a very large and diverse network, and we could spend an incredible amount of money and time on our footpaths, for example, with 500 kilometres or the likes of throughout our city. So it is about balancing the priorities of the reference group against the budget and trying to get the best bang for buck is the advice that officers have been giving the group, but being clear that some of this work we can and do as a matter of course as we're doing renewals and upgrades, as I touched on earlier.
In terms of the, as geographic's the word in my mind, but you know, the different neighborhoods around the city and everything, like the intent is to be comprehensive in terms of area?
Really good question. There's been a lot of discussion and debate. Would we go for the inner city? Would we go for areas around health centres? Would we go around urban centres? Or should we focus, for example, on poorly lit areas in some of our urban or rural areas? And certainly that's something we're taking advice from the group as our experts in that area, and we'll work that through.
Thank you. Just finally, excuse me, in 4.4 you indicate that intending to undertake that audit over 2 years. I assume that's FY26 and FY27 then?
Yes, we were hopeful to get some of that work done this year, but realistically it'll be next year and the following year.
And the rationale around 2 years is why drag it out for 2 years?
A couple of reasons mainly, Council. First and foremost, Councillor, funding. The funding split over 2 years. Also, realistically, the outcome of this audit might take us 10 years, 15 years to remediate any issues that we find. So there is some practicality around the amount of information, the amount of work that comes out of it, and the amount of work we can capture in that time.
So if budget had been made available, and acknowledge that to date it hasn't been, but if budget had been made available, the audit could be executed in 1 year and we could get on with the actual remediation after year one?
Certainly our workload would fit available budgets.
Thank you. I think that's it for now, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of questions, so thank you very much. So, councillors, we've got the 2 recommendations that are in your papers, plus the additional one that the committee do a regular progress report on council infrastructure accessibility initiatives. So I'll look to move all 3, and seconded by Councillor Hancock. Just a few brief comments. I'm really pleased to see this coming back, and it was quite heartening to look through all the photos, see all of the, particularly in the parks areas, all of the changes that have been made, and I'm very, pleased to see them. So well done on that work. Acknowledge that this is going to be a work in progress over a number of years. I thank the Disability Reference Group for bringing this to our attention, because clearly there was quite a big deficit of accessibility initiatives that needed to be addressed. I will be keen to see when we look at long-term plans that we have got adequate budget in place to make the necessary improvements in a reasonable space of time. But other than that, I think it's good to see the work being done and to know that progress is being made, so well done. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm also really pleased to see this report come through and pleased to see the progress that's being made. And just as the representative on the Disability Reference Group, I want to acknowledge the significant amount of engagement that's happening with the group, which I think is really appreciated by the group, both in being kept informed about the progress and also feedback being sought in terms of identifying priorities going forward and some input even into the procurement process. So just really want to acknowledge the work that officers are doing in terms of that engagement. It's really positive. I've followed this through over quite a few years now, and we have always been given assurance that there are the budgets included in to progress this work, and certainly targeting the priority areas is a priority of the group, and I think I'm comfortable with how that's tracking.
Thank you. No further comments, so we will take the vote, please. We'll do all 3 together unless anybody wants them separated. And that is carried, 11 votes for and none against. So next we've got item 12 on page 73, and that is Accessibility Charter, Actions and Resources Needed for Council to Adopt. And that will be presented by Jessica Papel, Marketing Manager, and Olivia Wicks, Communications Manager. Kia ora koroa.
Morena Tato, Jessica Papel, Marketing Manager. Thanks for your time today. It's exciting to get this report to you after the Disability Reference Group did request this a number of years ago. We've worked with the Disability Reference Group to understand where we are in terms of accessibility across our communications. All in all, we feel that there is a really good base, but there's always things to work on in terms of being more accessible in the community for our public. There was a desire to sign the charter and to have council endorse the accessibility charter for all communications going forward. There is the work that we've done so far is to understand where we are in terms of our communications, and it will require quite a substantial financial investment into making sure that everything that we do meets the charter. So we have requested that we do defer the official planning onto the long-term plan so that we can have the time and space to actually understand the scope of how much this will cost for our community as well. But we have outlined in the document some quick wins that we can continue to do now so we don't lose momentum on our documentation and work that we do. Both Liv and I are here today because we own different parts of the charter and we would be responsible for different areas. So we're able to answer questions for different things. The Disability Reference Group did acknowledge that there is a key part to the charter that they are really interested in, and that is Easy Read. Easy Read was the Auckland City Council attachment that not only makes it easy for people that use the read speakers, but they're also really helpful to people that have intellectual disabilities. The thing that I would let council know is there is quite a significant time investment in creating those. So we use a specific translation service to do that work, and they are 6 weeks lead time. So it's a really important thing for council to note that with consultations and timeframes that are adopted within council, normally we'd start 2 weeks after, but we just really need to be aware that timeframes would have to increase. So yeah, that's all.
No, nothing further from me to add, so we're happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just on that time frame thing, that's hurting my brain a little bit because I know some of the pace we work at, particularly in our big consultations like annual budget. So can you step us through that? What would that actually mean for things like LTP if we wanted to go down that route?
We would need to essentially, if you're thinking of like an annual budget or a long-term plan, we'd probably need your help to get our consultation document signed off in December, so we could get that Easy Read done so we could go out for consultation in March. So there is, yeah, I know, it's those timeframes are particularly tricky. They're also tricky for some of the emergency type work we do, which we need to, that would be part of that scope of work that we do moving forward too, is, you know, things like water pipes bursting or those kind of things like that. That does make it a bit trickier as well with some of the lead times for these formats.
I just might add to that, the Easy Read company that we spoke with, they did say that, you know, they do work really closely with groups, you know, if there is an emergency need to public health or things like that, that is the priority. So, you know, but there just is cost involved in that. So the document that I actually attached is about $2,500 to create. But what they have said is that, you know, in the accessibility, one of the other attachments that we put through was this document, and that helps guide the way that we would implement this program. And it does give the advice that we can create it ourselves and pass it back to them to approve, but it is going to take us a few times to get into the rhythm as to how that works. So that, you know, for the first, I would say, year, we would be wanting to use their expertise to understand actually how we do this.
Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. Thanks for the report. Given the issues that the report has shown in terms of some of those, what's been mentioned, the timely issues, and also the conflicting legislation that's outlined in 4.6. Do we have the option of any sort of partial, standard, or is it all or nothing?
So we offered to the Disability Reference Group, did they want to create some priorities that they endorsed, so that we didn't sign the full charter. The steer from the group was no, that they would prefer to sign the full charter as it is, but I guess it's up to elected members as to how they want to progress, and whether there was certain things that you wanted us to ensure that we did hit every single time or thing that we did. So that's yeah.
I guess, just to clarify, if we sign the charter, we have to commit to everything that's in it. Other councils are looking at accessibility as well at the moment, and Rotorua, I think a month or two ago, have instead gone the way of creating an accessibility policy, which covers this kind of stuff, but also what Kathy and Glenn were just referring to as well. So there's, I guess, different organisations are looking at accessibilities in different ways.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess just building on that a little bit, with your engagement with our disability reference group, is there a kind of broader conversation around seeing how some other local governments in Aotearoa are tackling this, and whether some of those might be more fit for purpose than a 2017 or 2012 or something document that is now being pushed into 2025?
I guess we haven't gone down the full what other councils are doing. We do know, just as we put this document into the agenda, the ministry let us know that Wellington City, Wellington Regional and Christchurch have indicated that they are going to sign the charter. From what we can gather so far, there's no real... we can't visibly see that yet, so we're not seeing that on their websites or their social media channels, for example, at this point. We do know that the other element is one of the metros has got a budget in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to look at accessible formats in their long-term plan. So we do know that, yeah, there is that different thing. We could go down that path, but I think it was very clear from our reference group that they are really wanting us to sign the charter.
Yeah. Okay, and in terms of our timing of when we might be in a position in good faith to put a signature to it, what does that look like?
So what we would need to do over the next year is look at, and we think there's probably like tens of thousands of different bits of communication that we put out across the organisation. So we would need to look at everything we already have and are doing, and will that be needed in the future? So that would be one element, but then also the looking forward, we'd need to work with like the reference group to prioritise each of those different areas as well, and different bits of information. We'd need to work with some software engineering companies to get a better scope of those development costs, and work with the translators as well. Our rough indication that we were hoping to give you is that we would like to bring a paper back probably in August, September next year. So in that lead up to you looking at the LTP programs, so before you start having those conversations, you have a good idea of what those costs look like. If you chose to, like we could sign the charter today, the only caveat to that is that we do have that 5-year time limit. So we would need to, because we don't have those budgets in place, those first 2 years would be looking at that work program, doing that work regardless. It would just reduce the amount of time, so 3 years, and probably a more significant budget within those first 3 years of the LTP to get us up to that point of signing the charter.
Great, thank you. Madam Chair.
Councillor Naylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just following up and just listening to other questions. The paper that comes back in August or September of next year, will that just specifically cover what it would take to sign up to the charter, or would there be some options in there that included what an accessibility policy looked like in terms of to make things a bit more pragmatic around some of the challenges that you've identified in this paper?
Yeah, we could put them both in there to give you options.
Okay, so that will happen without any further direction?
We can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's the end of the questions, so thank you for your report. So the recommendations are that the committee receive the report titled Accessibility Charter, Action and Resources Needed, presented to the Community Committee on 21st of May 2025, and that the Chief Executive prepare a programme for the 2027-2037 long-term plan for elected members to consider. So I'm happy to move those, and Councillor Hancock will second, and I will open it up if there's any comment. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, really commend staff on progress to date on this, and also, taking a very serious approach on this, and not just a let's sign it and pretend approach. But this is really fundamental stuff in terms of people's access and ability to participate in society. And I think it will take some investment, and obviously will take some time. But I'm very pleased with the path that we're on in terms of setting out to do it well to the standard it needs to be, so that everyone in the community does enjoy the rights of participation in public discourse and council business. Thank you.
Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. Just firstly want to acknowledge the aspirations of the Disability Reference Group, who have made it really clear that they would like us to sign up to the Accessibility Charter. And going into anything like that and giving consideration to it, it's important that we understand the full implications of that, and I think this report's been really useful in clarifying some of the benefits as well as some of the challenges that may include. Obviously, I have huge aspirations for us to engage in a more accessible way. I'm pleased that the officers will provide some practical solutions that would help us achieve that aspiration if, in fact, the signing up of the Charter is in any way problematic, either legislatively or in terms of our timeframes for communicating with our community. So I look forward to that further report and being able to give full consideration to all of that.
Thank you. No further comments, so we'll take the vote. Thank you. That is carried, 9 votes for and none against. So next we have item 13 on page 37 of the agenda, and that's update on the Ada Street project. So we've got Anu Sefton, Community Development Advisor, Stephanie Belvin, Manager Community Development, and Anna Gordon, I think, here, yep, from Fire and Emergency New Zealand. So welcome, and floor is yours.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Anu Sefton toko ingoa. It's a pleasure to give you an update on the Ada Street project. I just have one question before we start, is how do I move on the slides? There's a clicker. Thank you very much. We had hoped that we'd have Inspector Ashley Gurney here with us from New Zealand Police, but he's been held up. But I would like to introduce you to Anna Gordon, who will take us through some of the background around Ada Street. What do I push? Sorry.
Kia ora e te whānau, ko Anna Takawengoa. I work as the Senior Advisor Community Readiness and Recovery for Fire and Emergency New Zealand. Part of our role is to look at how to reduce the occurrence of fire and put programs in place to ensure that our community is as safe as we can make them. Something that we came across as an issue was Ada Street was significantly high in the number of fires that we were attending. This isn't a new issue for us. There have been generations of fires at Ada Street, and there have been generations of examples of how we've tried to combat these fires. We have discovered that recently, the fires that we had been involved with, there had been a real change. It had moved away from the couches and the student parties and the front fences to become more fires that were more flammable, had different fuel loading in them. There were lithium-ion batteries, there were furniture, there was tyres. That came with a whole different level of risk to the community in Ada Street and to our firefighters as well. I'm sure you'll understand the carcinogens that some of these will output, and then we were exposing our firefighters to these. Some of the human behaviours as well were causing issue for our attendance and response, and as such we were attending alongside police to be able to provide us with the emergency response we needed within Ada Street. So the behaviours had really changed in Ada Street. We came to the Safe Advisory Committee with this as an issue. In 2023, Ada Street had had 42 fires, 95 of those were deliberately lit, and most of them had occurred overnight. Some occurrences our firefighters had attended up to 7 fires in one night at Ada Street, so you can imagine that ties up a lot of resource, and if there was a CPR required somewhere in the city, our fire appliances are then sitting at Ada Street. 62% of all of our rubbish fires for the city occurred in the Ada Street area. We noticed that the behaviour really was changing. There was a lot of fly tipping down Ada Street, and that was what was being set on fire, sometimes by street residents, sometimes by people that were passing through the street. Do you want me to do the police call-outs as well? Sure. So police had also noticed when we brought this issue through to the Safe Advisory Committee, other organisations that sit around that table started looking at their statistics as well, and so police had also noticed that their attendance at incidents at Ada Street had been quite high. Some of that was attending alongside us, but a lot of that was attending other human behaviour factors that were happening inside the street, and you can see the graph there.
So New Zealand Police had actually been called out to Ada Street New Zealand Police had actually been called out to Ada Street around 219 times until April 24 when we initiated the Ada Street project. Yes, and that's 50% more times than in Average Street in Palmerston North. The average street in Palmerston North is around 58 call-outs. So we started our Ada Street engagement in April 2024, and just let me see if I can click this. Yeah, I'm not very good at the clicker. So we started with a barbecue, and at that barbecue we surveyed the street around their moi moi ai, their dreams and aspirations. We had 60 surveys completed, 150 sausages eaten, and 3 home fire surveys, fire visits completed. And the sausages. What we found from the surveys that the residents felt particularly unsafe. We had landlords who were having difficulty maintaining tenancy due to threats from other houses on those tenants. People didn't want to walk down that street to get to town, so they were avoiding that street. Fun fact, if you Google Ada Street, it comes up as the most preferred route from town to your hotel. So our visitors are regularly walking down Ada Street via Google recommendation. The moi moi ai from the residents in Ada Street was to have the trees cut. They wanted to have some signage, I think we've got that. Some signage around the alcohol control area, fines for fly tipping, and they wanted CCTV. That's not something that we often do in the streets, is put up CCTV, but we did manage some traffic management cameras. So since our barbecue, we have had a 63% drop in police call-outs. We did a little study or a snapshot between June 2023 and August 2023 where there were 63 police call-outs in that small amount of time. In June 2024 to August 2024, there were 23 police call-outs, so that is a significant drop. Alongside that, the drop in fires, it has reduced from 42 fires on Ada Street to 2 deliberately lit fires on Ada Street. That's also had a really big impact on our firefighters, their physical well-being and their mental well-being by not having to get up several times during a night. 2025, we have revisited Ada Street and we conducted another survey just to see how things were going. The general consensus is that people feel a lot safer. They've noticed the reduction of fires. People are willing to walk through Ada Street to get to town. One of the big outcomes from our 2025 barbecue was we have now 19 residents who want to become socially connected within that street to continue building a safer Ada Street. And that is, I've just explained that, the phase 2, which is the social connection and advocacy. So our phase 1 was about stabilising that street and making sure that it was a safer street to live, to walk down or to visit. Our second phase is around social connection and advocacy, working with our residents so that they can advocate for how they want their street to be. And then our third phase will be exiting and letting the residents of that street lead their own moi moi ai, their dreams and aspirations. Any questions?
Thank you very much. That's awesome. I will open up for questions. Councillor Mickelad.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, team, for the report. You've mentioned, the report, you've mentioned in your slide that, 60 surveys were done, 150 sausages were eaten on the day. But how many people attended? Because the report is silent on that.
Absolutely good. Yes. The first barbecue, we saw over 60 residents come to that barbecue. Following that barbecue, we also had a landlords and home owners meeting here at council where we had around 15, 16 people attend. The second barbecue, it was a slightly reduced amount of people that attended. We had 49 responses to our survey. But there was considerably more people there as well. So I would say maybe, 100 people?
Easily, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. My second question is around, I know your work is across agency sort of work. How many agencies were involved in that?
So we worked alongside, there were ourselves, corrections, police. We then worked alongside the landlords, Horizons, council. We've developed programs in the past to look at Ada Street and the issues that has arisen from Ada Street, and they have had success. And when we looked at this, there was a real change, and we knew it was no longer a student issue. There are not a lot of students that live down the street now, and we knew that it was a bigger issue than what we could do. So having multi-agencies involved in this has really given us a different lens to look at Ada Street and to identify exactly what the issues were. We've been really fortunate to work alongside council. I think having someone committed to this from council has brought all of the right people together at the right level through the right organisations to be able to empower us to work together to come up with a really usable solution. And I think that's something that's been quite unique in the Ada Street project, that it hasn't landed on one agency, and that it's been multi-agency.
Through you, Madam Chair. You've made an interesting observation there. You said it moved from a student issue. At what point did it move from a student issue to a wider social illegal activity issue?
Yeah, so probably 10 years ago, it was a student issue, and we had worked alongside Massey University, and we had put some solutions in place where they were able to enforce their powers upon students and student behaviour. That was no longer the case anymore. It's not student parties, it's not couches, and it's not fences that are being burnt, we noticed a real change. It was fly tipping. There was a massive fly tipping issue. Lithium-ion batteries, people getting rid of tyres. That wasn't a student issue. So yeah, we needed to approach this differently.
Just to follow on from that, we have done a quick scan of the demographics of the street. There are 34 students in 2024 living on that street. That has significantly reduced in 2025. And the majority of the street is made up of families. We have 3 reintegration houses on that street as well. So it's quite a mixed bag, and it's no longer populated by students.
Second last question, Madam Chair, if you allow me. How many infringement notices or illegal dumping or illegal activities? Because you mentioned here that some of the penalties involved infringements. From a council perspective, I'm not sure if you have data as well from the police perspective or if that's been fed into this survey. How many do you reckon have been handed out? Let's say.
We've not done one yet.
Okay.
So yeah, that's a work in progress.
The next step actually says that officers will continue to progress the Ada Street project towards further community safety and well-being. Does this mean that more barbecue sort of engagement will be happening, or what sort of engagement are we looking at, or community-led engagement are we looking at?
Yes, community-led is the operative term. We are yet to re-engage with the 19 people who have asked to be socially connected. Once we have done that, we will take how they would like to work with this and then wrap around the support and the services that they need. It could mean another barbecue, it could be soup on the street, it could be a women's group, who knows, but it will be community-led.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Anna, probably just a bit of clarification from you, and just leading on from one of the questions Councillor McLeod asked. Prior to 2024, can you just explain what steps have been kind of taken to try and sort of alleviate some of the risks around the fires that were occurring in Ada Street? Perhaps explain the step change in terms, if you could.
Yeah, so there had been an Operation Combi had been in place many years ago, and that had been successful for the issue that was in place at the time. Operation Combi looked to, at the end of the student year, assist the students in getting rid of any rubbish that they had collected, and that had started in Ada Street and then had spread throughout the community. Because of the change of behaviour, we had recognised early on that Operation Combi would potentially not work as a longer term solution. The university was able to enforce behavioural guidelines in the student conduct. So if students had been caught lighting fires, then the university could revoke their ability to attend their courses. So that had always been the stick that had been available. When we realised the change in demographics on the street, we knew that that was no longer going to be a viable option for longer term success. So it became really visible to us that we needed to engage with other organisations. Fire and emergency, we're normally able to enter into streets, and our branding and the trust that the community has with us lets us do a lot of work in a lot of communities that sometimes other organisations can't engage in. It was different for us in Ada Street. As our firefighters were arriving, they were being, bottles were being thrown at them. We'd had firefighter injuries. Firefighters were not, their officers were having to undertake different tactics as they were arriving on Ada Street for firefighter safety. So we knew that our branding was probably not going to get us as far as it could in other communities. So being able to work alongside other people meant that we could use the right branding for the right messaging at the right time through the project as well.
Yep, thank you. Can I just get a comment in terms, you've talked about the change in terms of the population and demographics of Ada Street. Was COVID part of the catalyst for that change to occur?
I think potentially yes. I think the university as well, when we spoke to students that were on streets close by, like Rolleston and other close streets, like they had mentioned that a lot of their courses were now online, so that there weren't the student populations that had once been there. So potentially COVID has changed everybody's ability to do everything online now, and has probably sped up technology through our communities. So yes, I think COVID has had a change on that, but probably as fire and emergency, we don't collect the data that I could hand on heart tell you that yes, and this is the data before that date and the data afterwards. But we're assuming that yes, that has been involved.
Okay, thank you. And my last question really is just around my observation of both Ada Street and Royston Street. They have suffered for a long period of time with these, rubbish fires and things. The road surfacing in both of those streets is pretty appalling. So do we have any understanding of whether or not that can be resurfaced in the future?
I'm looking to my right.
Through you, Madam Chair, Glenn O'Connor, Manager Transport. We're currently evaluating our summer sealing process, going through the candidate sites with an eye to the sites in most need that will get sealed over the summer season. We do have to follow a process there, as this sealing program in excess of $3 million is co-funded by NZTA. So we have to go through a candidate site list, work it through highest priorities, and the sites that are most in need of surfacing will get surfaced this summer. If they don't fall into this summer season surfacing program, they will go into the next summer season's surfacing. We'll be able to confirm that list by about August or early September.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a follow-up question to Councillor Hancock's actually around the need assessment around resurfacing. Is that need simply identified as the physical state of the surface of the road, or is the need cognizant of the social milieu and some of the changes and dynamics that are happening in neighbourhoods?
Through the Chair, NZTA's co-funding does focus heavily on the physical state of the road. Certainly the changing status of use is something that officers also consider when we're discussing the program with NZTA.
And in terms of our ability to gain traction with NZTA around that broader perspective, what's our track record?
Officers have a very good relationship with our local NZTA representatives, and I'd hope that would continue through the sealing process.
Thank you. And thank you, Danu and Anna, for the presentation, the report, the incredible work that's gone into this. And I think questions are, at least initially for you, I'm really interested in kind of contextualizing this and understanding, if you rewound the clock, kind of what your expectation was versus kind of what's been achieved.
I didn't really go in with any expectations. It was really important that we went in and did the community consultation first to hear what it was that they wanted to happen, and then to be very proactive about making those things happen, because that is part of that trust model that we do in community development. You ask for something and we work very hard to deliver. I certainly can say that I feel like we've exceeded our expectations. The power of collective impact is shown greatly with this project. The fact that we did one barbecue and we all showed up was a phenomenal first step. In fact, we can almost say that overnight there was a shift in that street. We continued with that visibility with New Zealand Police taking regular walk downs down Ada Street and connecting with the residents. Certainly Fire did regular drive-bys. Every time I had a council car, I drove down Ada Street. So we continued our presence and continued to build the relationship on a positive level.
Cool, thank you. And Anna, from your perspective and FENS?
So FENS, we are very much impact players as an emergency service. So for us, it has been probably the impact that has had the most surprise on us is the longer term relationships we've been able to build whilst being involved in this process. So even just on Monday, we had a quick catch up about this presentation, and we were able to talk through other issues that had arisen and looking at those that were sitting around the table, how we could all put information into that. So I think although this model has worked very well for Ada Street, I think for us it's provided some longer term networks, relationships that we will be able to have a larger scale impact across the community to do longer term works.
Great, thank you both. So Anna, just following up then in terms of FENS, is this Ada Street experience and the success recently through that changing how FENS is working more broadly?
Yes, I believe so. I work as part of the district headquarters, so our district covers a similar size to Horizons if you take Tararua away. So what we are aiming to do with the way that we are engaging is to pick up this model and also to implement it in different cities, different towns as we come across different issues. But it has really highlighted for us how successful it is when we work alongside other agencies. And having Anu here to spearhead that has been the success of this project. Like definitely the council has been the spearhead for this project. We've been impact players along the council process.
Great, thank you. And finally, I guess if police were in the room and they're not, but I guess given your conversations with them, is this changing how police is working?
It has changed probably our engagement in a community level with police, in that now we have that very real face-to-face relationship alongside police. I think we are very fortunate in having Ash as part of this team, who is a phenomenal operator within that realm. He sits quite highly and is very highly regarded in police here in Palmerston North, but took the time every lunchtime to walk down Ada Street. So to have that on-the-ground ability has had a massive impact on this project, and I'm sure will on projects in the future.
Great. Thank you both.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of the questions. So thank you both very much, and thank you especially, Anna, for coming in and waiting patiently. We appreciate that. So I'm happy to move that we receive the recommendation, that we receive the memorandum entitled Update on the Ada Street Project presented to the Community Committee on 21st of May 2025, and look to Councillor Hancock to second that. Just a few comments from me. I mean, this has clearly been a project which no one group or organisation could have done on their own, and the strength of it has been in groups joining together, and also I think in taking the relationship-focused approach, which has really worked. So, you know, big congratulations to all involved, particularly our own community development team, and Anu, who's been the worker in all of this. And I think it has achieved extraordinary results, way and above what could have been expected, actually. And hopefully it provides a bit of a model for other projects in other areas going forward. And I understand it has been nominated for a special prize, so well, fingers crossed that comes off. But I think it's a brilliant example of what can be done when groups work together, when we work to sort of meet people where they're at and to build relationships and show that we actually care about them and their street, rather than just sort of coming in to literally put out fires. So thank you very much to everyone who's been involved with it. It's been awesome. Right, people queuing up, no doubt, to also offer their congratulations. Councillor Mickelad.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, team, for the work that you've done on this, actually. I lived on Ada Street between 2020 and 2023, so I've had first-hand experience of some of the safety concerns that have been identified in this report. I think one thing that I'm going to say is that when I first got elected in 2021, I had a number of my neighbors actually coming to me and asking me if something could be done about the noise level, could be done about the burning of couches or books that students were burning on the, in the middle of the road. And every time I inquired of staff, I was always say this is a police matter, that they should always call the police and that sort of thing. So it's great to actually see now that to see this new approach, community-led development initiative to sort of build relationships and also influence behavior change. I think this model is actually working well. It's worked well for Ada Street by the looks of it, or by what's been presented to us. And it is my hope that this can be done also in other parts of the city that are socially and economically disadvantaged. I think building that relationship is important, and long may it continue. So thank you guys for the work that you're doing, and I think this is a great outcome. And I pray and I hope that one day will continuously support our community development team to do the great work that they're doing around this space. Thank you.
Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thank you very much to Aaron Anu for the presentation of the paper. Yeah, really look, just to echo everybody's views, I guess, in terms of the success of the Ada Street project. And if we just go back a little way, a special thanks really, I think, to Justin Story from FENZ, who actually came into the Safety Advisory Board and actually brought the issues of Ada Street to the Safety Advisory Board's attention. And out of that, of course, this particular program has grown. And of course, Council's role in this really has just been a bit of seed funding, about $1,000. And of course the facilitation skills of Anu, who has, I guess, drawn together the various stakeholders to provide a collective impact approach to resolving these issues. We can actually just look at, there is a paragraph in the report there which just says that the cost benefit tells us that we've actually saved in excess of $60,000 in terms of frontline costs. And that alone, I'm sure, would be an absolute underestimation in terms of if you actually counted up, the police time, FENZ time, and all of the other reactive time that is actually put into trying to resolve things when you're actually chasing the problem rather than actually getting in front of the problem and actually enabling a community really to take some ownership of their dreams and aspirations. We need to remind ourselves that Ada Street and surrounding streets are in fact actually a high deprivation area. We more often think of, other parts of our city that are high deprivation areas, but these roads in this vicinity are high deprivation, have a high deprivation index. And I guess if we actually start to sum up this program itself, it is an exemplar of collective impact. It's about the sum of what we actually can do together in terms of achieving better outcomes for our community. So if we work collaboratively and to a collective impact model, our changes are often immediate, but they will be durable and sustainable. And that is what we need to do. And I guess from a council perspective again, is that functional neighbourhoods and communities benefit everybody. Dysfunctional neighbourhoods benefit nobody. So, and that goes right through from the way we coexist and sort of the levels of social cohesion, but it goes right through to how our commerce sector actually operates and profits by functional communities. And I suppose a couple of last points really is that the impact, I think, of COVID in terms of changing the demographics of that street, I think we could underestimate and underestimate the impact of that. And it's really important that as a council we are, I guess, sensitive to the changes that do occur within our communities and are able to respond accordingly. The roading condition for Rolleston and Ada Street and a number of other streets in those particular areas doesn't help people's sense of being valued and included to the wider community. So I would urge council officers really just to think about making sure that we take an opportunity to actually tidy up some of that. And finally, I think the point we need to make is that we have to be very careful that we don't stigmatise parts of our community as well. So we've talked a lot about Ada Street today, and I would hope that when this is reported that we do so in the most positive way that we possibly can. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hancock. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Couldn't agree more than with Councillor Hancock's comments. And I did just want to comment to note that connection of driver through the safety advisory group. This whole project has really illustrated so effectively what council's role can be when we're faced with these wider social infrastructure problems. And Councillor McLeod's right, we're often asked what's council going to do about X, Y, Z, and possibly the rest of the alphabet. And often the answer is that's not really council's job. We've all been there in those conversations, and that's absolutely right. It's not really council's job, but sometimes there's nobody else who can bring together the relevant bits of the community. And what this has showed is for a very small investment, tiny, teeny weeny investment, that $60,000 plus of saved expenditure from across our community, because we all pay one way or another. It really doesn't matter at this point whether this is ratepayer money or taxpayer money. They're all our community. And Councillor Hancock said very eloquently that functional communities benefit everyone and dysfunction benefits no one. But dysfunction impacts on so many people in so many different experiences of their community. And as we around this table do battle with those trust and confidence kind of figures that we've been talking about in our surveys, this is exactly the kind of activity that council can take, which builds trust and confidence in our people and the services that we offer. So I'm really delighted with this report.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to first acknowledge Councillor Hancock's very thoughtful commentary and absolutely concur with that in terms of painting that broader picture, and just wanted to add my voice of appreciation to the staff at council and to FENS and the other partners in there. It's just a truly extraordinary outcome. I really only became aware of this initiative much more recently than many others in the room, I think, and just truly incredible. Like, you're literally putting out fires before they start is just an amazing outcome. So congratulations and appreciation to all.
Well, thank you. That's the end of the comments. And I hope the warm words of congratulations can be passed on to FENS, police, and any other partners. That would be great. Thank you. Right, we will take the vote. And that has passed, 8 votes for and none against. So that brings us on to the work schedule on 141. And I'll just check with the GM in case there's any update. Are there any questions, Councillor Barrett?
Could I just understand how we got such precise dates in 2026?
Well, I did ask if some dates could be put in, so perhaps that's why. Would you like the GM to respond?
No, we'll take that as an answer. Thank you.
Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. Just items 16 and 17 have got about 22, 2 years from the direction to the report and 22 months. So acknowledging that there was some prep work done December in 2024, I'm just wondering why those reports will be another 15 months past that and like close to 2 years past when that direction's been given.
I'll just pass that one over to the GM for strategic planning.
Through you, Madam Chair. So as you recall, there was a paper that came late 2024 with a scope and timeframe for that work. There was subsequently some, so that work was led out by strategic planning, but the review will actually be led by infrastructure from the property team. So as you're aware, there's some changes and that we've got a new manager of property, Glenn, who's joined the team. So look, I'm happy to have a conversation with the General Manager Infrastructure and Property Manager regarding that time frame, but for now that's the best we can provide. But certainly I know there has been conversations about wanting to accelerate that work as best as possible within existing resources.
Given the length of time, and I hear the comments that have been made, is there any potential for an update to elected members at an earlier stage, even if the full work and full report hasn't been completed?
Yes, we can do that.
And in what form do we need to request that, or will that just happen?
Kathy Dever-Todd, Manager Parks and Reserves. So in discussions yesterday, the property manager will bring a report to committee outlining the process for the property strategic review, and then you can see some timelines on how these other parcels of work fit into that wider program of work.
Oh, so that will come as a report, will it, in this year, or?
In this term of council, yes.
Okay. Just the other question was, we've got an August meeting and then it looks like there's a March meeting 7 months apart. Is there no plan for any other meeting post-August before next March?
I guess that's the new triennium. Normally the committee structure isn't established. We don't start with the committee meetings until the new year. And so I guess it's just an estimated date. It could be February or March. Okay. And it's a placeholder governance time.
And is the expectation that if we whilst we haven't got committees, that work will continue but will come to the council meetings like it did in the beginning of this triennium? Or
yes, when appropriate, I'm told.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I'll move that the committee receive its work schedule dated May 2025, seconded Councillor Hancock, and we'll take the vote. And that has passed, 9 votes for and none against. So that brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you all very much. Thank you to officers and governance staff. And I'll just do the closing karakia. Kia puta ki te whaio, ki te ao marama, whakamoia kia tina, haumie huie taikie. And over to the Deputy Mayor for information about workshops. Thank you.